So we are live. A warm welcome to all the viewers, especially those who will be seeing this interview come conversation today with a very illustrious personality, Dr. Parakala Prabhakar, who is a pass out alumni of JNU, a very prestigious institution, and furthermore, a PhD holder from the London School of Economics. He is a political economist, an author, and so many feathers in his caps. Recently, he's added much more feathers in his caps. Uh, Not just one cap, but several caps by now. That he has openly come out and written a book which talks about, if you would have read this book or even heard about it, The Crooked Timber of New India, uh, essays on a republic in crisis. So he's been someone who's very outspoken, very candid about his observations as an economist, as an academician, as a person who has knowledge about economics. Today, Dr. Parakala Prabhakar, I wanted to address certain issues with you, which are youth oriented. And this is one group that has been, you know, by far quite ignored, although they are one of the biggest sufferers under this regime of Modi and Bharatiya Janata Party. So we want to address today a decade of broken dreams. Um, and this regime has certainly given rise to the youth wasting away. So my first question to you today is that PM Narendra Modi in 2014 and the run up to the Lok Sabha election campaign in 2014, he had widely campaigned on the promise of creating 2 crore jobs per annum. Um, but what we've witnessed ever since is the complete opposite of that. So whether it is loss of jobs through selling of PSUs or the destruction of the MSME sector entirely through demonetization and GST, or not filling the lakhs of jobs in the government sector. This entire decade, in a nutshell, has been a decade of broken promises and broken dreams for the youth of India. What are your observations about this phenomenon?
Dev, thank you very much for having me. Since you said, we speak to the younger audience, I'm quite excited because it is they who have to carry forward this. People like me, our runway ahead of us is very limited, very short. We had a long runway behind us. So, and people who are younger now in their 20s, maybe 30s, they have a much longer runway ahead of them, and they'll have to live and see and reap the kind of things that are happening, the results of what is happening now. And the most important crisis that we face today in our economy and in our polity is the crisis of livelihoods. Let me put it that way. Not just the government jobs. Government jobs are anyway going to be limited. Whoever wants to, fill those, that's going to be limited. But the larger employment opportunities are in the general livelihoods. That is possible only if our young people are, skilled, educated, and employable, and the economy is configured in such a way that it not only generates growth but it also generates jobs, because in a country like India, which has a huge labor component, um, jobless growth is very counterproductive. So you need to have
Yes.
a growth strategy oriented towards creating jobs, not just the growth. We'll come to that a little later, what is happening in the economy. That is one. And then for that to happen is that you need to have a lot of investment in a proper way. Then you need to have the rural distress to be completely eliminated or considerably reduced. Agriculture should be profitable, and it should generate a lot of income so that they can employ a lot of people. These are the 4 or 5 things that the government will have to take into account and pay attention to. But what is happening now, whatever the government has done and whatever kind of a growth figures that they're showing, which are of course contestable, are the following. One is a tremendous growth of inequality in India. The
Yes,
inequality
yes.
World Inequality Lab had come out and said it's a very prestigious lab run by a very eminent economist by name Thomas Piketty. Some people pronounce him as Thomas Piketty because his French is Thomas Piketty. You understand? Thomas Piketty, their group had found that between 1923 and 2023, that's 100 years, this last 10 years are a historical maximum of uh, inequality. In other words, I mean, to put it concretely, 1% of our population corners about 22% of the national income. And
Wow.
1% of our population owns and controls about 40% of our national assets. This is the kind of inequality. And then comes the youth unemployment. The ILO report had said of all the people who are unemployed in India, 83% of them are young people. And of that 83%, 63% are educated young people. Now you can imagine that.
Wow.
And then if you look at where do we stand globally, globally, Dave, we are, you know, having one of the highest youth unemployment rates in India. That is at 24%. Now,
Wow.
24%, we are in the company of countries like Iran, Lebanon, Armenia, and Yemen, countries like that,
Syria.
Syria. They are not the economies that boast about fastest growing economy, fifth largest economy. They're not. And a small neighbor like Bangladesh has just half of our youth unemployment, that is 12%.
Wow.
And I don't have to tell you about, for 35,000 jobs announced by the railways in 2022, 1 crore 25 lakh people, young people have applied for it. Look at the ratio. And our
Yeah.
young people are prepared to go to Gaza, they're prepared to go to Ukraine, to do whatever jobs that come by their way. That is the kind of severe unemployment that young people of India face today. And our labor participation ratio is also on the decline. So all these put together, they all these factors are putting a lot of pressure on our young people. And what about those people who are, educated, and many firms and companies, they say, look, they are not only unemployed, but they are unemployable because they don't have proper skills. And all this talk about
Yes.
skill India has gone nowhere, which means that the government, although it announces very catchy slogans and programs with catchy titles like Skill India, Stand Up India, Khelo India, and all that, Make in India and all that, but after the inauguration and after the grand gala thing is over, and the next day morning newspapers and televisions carry huge headlines and all that, it's forgotten. So
Yes.
much so that forget about 2 crore jobs. Till now, in the election campaign, the ruling party is asking for a renewal of their mandate. They have not even able to say how much jobs they have created. The prime minister doesn't talk about youth, doesn't talk about employment, doesn't talk about industry, doesn't talk about anything. He just talks about, what. That is the
Well,
kind of
funnily
situation.
enough, yeah, I'll just interject here and share with you that someone had actually asked a question in Parliament as to how many jobs that this government has been able to provide or create in the last 10 years. The answer that came was 7 lakh 21,000. So
Yes.
instead of the
Hey,
projected 20 crore jobs that should have been created as per Modi ji's promise, only 7 lakh 21,000 have been created, which now brings me to the second question. So the flip side of the unemployment that you've been talking about, one of the most overlooked phenomenon in our country right now is how severely inflation has affected our youth and their education, higher education, their lifestyle, their ability to lead their lives of their choice, because survival has taken center stage for the majority of our youth. So we are looking at very high rates of rural and urban poverty amongst the youth, and which is palpable with the fact that people my age, I'm 32 years old, people my age and younger than me, we are literally just one health crisis away from becoming bankrupt. So, what are your observations in this regard?
inflation is very high. Let's not, get into these, percentages and things like that. We'll come to that later. That's also very important. But the point is this. The point is, you don't look at the government figures of 6.7, 7.2, 5.8, and 4.3, and all that kind of a thing. I want people like you to go to a shop and buy things. And I do that. Therefore, um, I know what was the price in December of, say, dal and chawal and sugar and things like that, and what they are in the beginning of this month, because I went again, and I go and pick up my own vegetables. So every week I have a report in my hand. I mean, how much did I spend or before that, and this week. This is one way of looking at it, because that is what matters. What doesn't matter is what the Economic Times or Financial Times or Mint or some kind of a pink paper publishes as the government version. That doesn't matter much, because you see, the in order to give out the figure of inflation, they have a basket of commodities in which a lot of things are there,
Yes.
but most of them are not relevant to my day-to-day life. My day-to-day life revolves around how much do I buy my rice for, how much do I buy my dal for, how much do I buy my sugar for, how much do I buy for my vegetables for. These are the things that matter, which is food inflation. And then, as you said, what matters to me is my education inflation. How much are my fees? Then what matters is my medical inflation, health inflation. Can I really afford go and get myself treated? As you said, you're just one illness away from bankruptcy. That's the kind of situation we are in,
Yes.
because they have a very high inflation. For instance,
Yes.
pulses, you have about 27% inflation. Don't be misled by about 6.7, 7.2, 4.5, 5.8. Don't get into that. What is the food inflation? What is health inflation? What is education inflation? These are the things that matter to a person like me and you. And of course, the young people, because their parents who are the providers so far, if they are not employed, that matters. Now, Dave, let's look at our day-to-day experience. Now, a few years ago, when I went to visit a family, they used to come in because they knew that I would prefer a coffee in the morning and a tea in the afternoon. They would automatically come and give me either a coffee or a tea. But these days, ask me, would you like to have coffee? Would you like to have coffee? Two or three times. Because, it's so difficult for them. One cup of coffee means, milk and sugar and some coffee powder or tea powder. These things are quite expensive now. You just can't,
Yes.
give anybody who enters your house. You're very, very cautious about it. That's what has made, uh, our, and the Reserve Bank of India, the latest monetary policy committee also did not revise the repo rate and the reverse repo rate because they are not confident that the inflation, rate is not in the safe zone yet. So, notwithstanding what the government says, what the political party which is ruling the country says, we are not in a safe zone as far as the headline inflation is concerned. And we are in a very, very dangerous zone as far as the food inflation, education inflation, health inflation, etc., which impinge on our day to day lives. That is what is the situation now.
Okay. My third question to you. As a result of the rampant unemployment rate under this regime, which you also mentioned the figure from ILO, the International Labour Organization, they've pegged it at 65.7%, which, as you rightly pointed out,
No,
is
that is
83%
that
of
is
the entire.
that with the 63-64% is the educated youth unemployed.
Ha, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And one more
So,
thing, I will tell you.
as a
I told you about 24%. 1 minute, Dave. I told you about 24% of the youth unemployment, which is very high, one of the high figures in the world. But then, if you slightly disaggregate that, the people who are between 20 and 25, for them, the unemployment rate is about 44%.
wow, okay, wow, I was not aware. No wonder. So that's where my question is going to stem from, that due to these abnormally high levels of unemployment, we are seeing an abnormal increase in antisocial behavior, drug severe drug usage, alcoholism, and wasting away of an entire generation. And I can share an example with you from Goa, that we've heard that 70,000 kgs of drugs which were seized from Adani's port, which were confiscated and they were there in storage. That 70,000 kgs of drugs went missing. And then on the flip side, in Goa, there's been a recent report where the drugs have reached the most rural and the most remotest villages in Goa. So, is there a connection in all of this? Is there a larger jigsaw puzzle? Where does all this fit in? And are our youth being groomed to become cannon fodder for, WhatsApp university and divisive politics?
Indeed, it's very worrying. One is the rise of increase in the drug abuse. The other one, I'll come to that. The other one, which is causing a lot of concern, is that if you look at the NCRB data, National Crime Records Bureau data by the Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, the highest number of suicides are in the following three categories. One is young people. Second is farmers. The third is self-employed. Now you can make out what it means. One. The second thing is that there's a lot of desperation among the youth. What do they do after they finish schooling, college, or if they're not lucky enough to go to school and college and all that? What do they do? Because they cannot be gainfully employed. So there is a lot of disappointment in their lives and despondency in their lives. We boasted about demographic dividend a while ago. Remember, some years ago we used to talk about demographic dividend. 53% of our country's population is young people. Now, if they're not harnessed
Yes.
properly, what is the point in having young people, of that magnitude? And if they're not gainfully employed, and if they don't have incomes, they get frustrated, they're desperate, they turn to drugs, they turn to crime. or they wallow in the kind of propaganda that they consume over their WhatsApp university and things like that. We used to be great in thousands of years ago. We should, instead of looking at future, they are encouraged to look back and somehow or the other satisfy themselves that our was on a very, very wonderful, that kind of a thing. So as you said, cannon fodder, something like that, in the sense, they become, the ribbon and, tika and trishul kind of a thing, they and the regime's leaders, their children are very secure, safe. They are on foreign universities. They're employed. They're well heeled. But the
Yes.
hoi polloi and the hewers of wood and carriers of water, drawers of water. They are the ones who are into these kind of things. So that is happening here in India on a very large scale, and that is a very, very serious cause for concern.
Indeed. It's I find it extremely heartbreaking that a population dividend of a country like ours, which you pointed out, 53% of our population is young. That entire human resource is completely being wasted, and it's wasting away. They're not gainfully employed. They don't have a direction about their future, no avenues of getting gainfully employed. So what do? They turn to basically different ways of escapism, whether it is through drugs, through drinks, through committing crimes, through even peddling drugs, or getting involved in communal strifes, or becoming part of the cause of communal strifes.
Their
So my
communalism
next question,
also Communalism is also a sort of drug.
yes, of course it is. Of course. It gives you a sense of false purpose, doesn't it? Now, my next question is India, specifically in the north, has been mired in a series of paper leak scams. We've seen crores of applicants, as you pointed out, for a few thousand jobs, not once, but many times over in this past decade. And we see the growing desperation in the youth, which has now taken the form of violent protests, destruction of public property and assets. Agniveer scheme and the whole protest following that is the prime example or the biggest example of this. Would you want to be a youth in today's time? Very frankly asking you.
No, not at all. I'm lucky. I feel very happy that I'm so lucky that I've grown up when I was a young person in a different India. I'll tell you why. It's not to say that past is always great and not the present and the future. It's not that. I don't get into that kind of a thing. I look forward to, and I have a lot of hope for the future. But my hope is not a blind hope that at any rate the future is going to be great. No, I believe in human agency, that we need to steer the future, we need to steer the present and go take it forward to a desirable, good future. The reason why I said, I really feel that I'm lucky to have grown up, when I grew up, when I was a young person, is that, I studied in a municipal school.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And I remember my father, at that time he was an MLA. Maybe, I think, yeah, the first time MLA he was. He took me to the municipal school and he joined me there and he admitted me there. And, I studied there, and which would have cost nothing, isn't it? Nearly nothing,
Yeah.
except, and then I joined then of course my higher secondary. I went to a mission high school in my hometown. We used to walk and come back, and again for a pittance. Then I went to a college again, very, very small fees. And then I went to JNU, again a very, very small fees. And then I had a scholarship to go to the London School of Economics. And again, now, even to admit a young toddler in a preschool or pre-nursery or a nursery, it costs you a fortune, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
second thing is our lives were simple, and we didn't have so much of a differentiation. I belong to this religion, they belong to that religion. That kind of a discrimination, etc., were not in our ecosystem then. Uh, and then, of course, we were not when people of my age, when they were employed, they were not drawing seven-figure, ten-figure salaries, but they were comfortable. They were all right. And somebody who studied, there were a lot of public sector undertakings. If they're technical, they're government jobs, and they were slowly the private sector was coming up, and there were jobs. Willy nilly, once maybe somebody is not employed, and going on looking at employment news and newspapers and advertisements and all that for a year or so. But then we came to know that they got jobs somewhere,
Hmm.
banks were recruiting and all that kind of thing. So this was happening, and I'm not prepared to say that it was the golden period. I'm not saying that, but then we did not have so much of a deprivation and so much of you know pressure on us, our parents and families. How do I educate the particular person, my son, my daughter? Where do I send? We didn't have that kind of a thing. So in
Yeah.
that way, I think if I were to, if you give me a chance now, a choice,
Hmm.
would you want to be a young person now in under these circumstances? I'm sorry, no.
Okay. I hear your answer loud and clear. And I would like to add to that, like having children nowadays, or, even deciding to have a child, it has become such a prohibitive idea because looking at the scenario as it is right now, it's unimaginable to bring up a child and give a proper education, and be able to make ends meet. I'm sure for a large number of people. That brings me to a question now that's connected to the national education policy. So, the NEP, the National Education Policy, has been described by many educationists as being an open attempt to reinforce the Varna or caste system by qualifying the exit of the OBCs, Adivasis, Dalits, the children of minorities, though not explicitly, but we know who will be forced to exit the system first due to the existing, uh, circumstances in society. So, what are your views on this? And are these the preliminary telltale signs of the Hindu Rashtra that BJP wants to establish?
There are one or two points which are of concern to me. If somebody tells a young person that, look, don't aspire for huge things, Swadharma is much better. If your father was a carpenter, you be a carpenter, you can learn things better. If your father or your family is, something, you carry on those professions. If you're a weaver, you be a weaver. If you're a goldsmith, be a goldsmith, Vishwakarma and all that kind of a thing. This somehow has been an unstated rule for the Indian society for millennia. Although there are some people who try to justify this as some sort of a division of labor, but as somebody who studied a bit of economics, I have not come across as division of labor anywhere which is defined by birth. One, secondly, where you can't escape it. There is no upward mobility. You are stuck
Yes.
there. That's not division of labor.
Yeah.
That is not only, you see, it is not division of labor. uh,
It's
it is
imprisonment.
it's something like that. It is division of laborers along caste lines. It is not division of labor. Now, having said that, Now, the new education policy, if it talks about skill development on those lines, it is very, very nefarious. Very nefarious. I suspect that. And I do not want India to go back on to that road. And taken back to Middle Ages kind of a thing. I think our
Yes.
education system should be scientific. You know, sometimes I wonder when during Corona, when the Prime Minister called for everybody to bang the plate, the entire country, even
Yeah.
young people, did
Light
that because
diyas.
that is because you see we have completely lost the scientific temper which was inculcated a generation or a couple of generations ago. Today you don't have that. Today it's a very small thing where it's a setting up of a mirror, but then you call that Surya Tilak, and 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 and, and
True.
people are awed by it. People think that there's something really divine in that. It's been there. It's a small tweak. Um, so these are the things that are happening, and in order to reinforce this kind of a ideology, thought process, and division of labor, and as you said, the varnashrama dharma and things like that. These are the little steps that the government and the regime is taking in order to push India back into that.
And basically fulfill their agenda of making India into a Hindu Rashtra, which has been there on their agenda for almost 100 years now,
True.
starting from the RSS. So, connected to scientific temper, society in general, but specifically more and more and prolifically amongst the youth, the scientific temper is being destroyed, as you pointed out, based on myths, lies, pseudoscience, fakery, quackery, along with delusions of past civilizational grandeur. One of the many directives under our constitution has been to inculcate or develop scientific temper among our people. But we see this regime actively promoting a regression to of our people, youth included, specifically through promotion of pseudoscience, asking questions, which is fundamentally important for developing scientific temper, has been made abhorrent under this regime. How far reaching would be the consequences of this, according to you?
Quite far reaching. One, of course, I told you about during the corona what happened. That's one. The second thing is, where is it coming from? Our own prime minister, inaugurating or participating in a hospital function, I think in your Mumbai, had said, you know, um, Ganesh. Look at Ganesh. Without it's a human body and an elephant head, without some kind of a plastic surgery, how is it possible? Which means that in ancient times we had plastic surgery. And then he also talked about IVF in say the birth of Kauravas from the from pots and things like that. This, and he repeated that after Mumbai. He repeated that in a science congress, and the entire crowd of scientists assembled there, they all clapped. So that was the beginning of the slide down. But the other thing is much which is concerned me much more was that when was it? Sometime in 22, I think. Lucknow bench of the High Court had referred a case of a dispute between a couple to the Lucknow University astrology head of the department to ascertain, excuse me, ascertain if the lady is a Mangalya. I mean, was she married? Is she
Manglik.
what Manglik? Yeah, was she Manglik?
Yeah.
So, and directed the petitioners to submit her horoscope. Is the court saying? No, this is where it is going. Um, so, and on the other hand, you had a lot of organizations which striven to promote scientific temper, and they have become very inactive on the other hand.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
the
Or
conjunction
have
between
been made inactive.
probably, yeah, their funding and their patronage and all that. On the one hand, the regime's onslaught on the scientific temper, as the instances I told you. On the other hand, the withdrawal of the organizations which were working towards the promotion of scientific temper. These two. And the regime and a lot of people, contemporary people, they confuse between science and technology. Science is an inquiry,
Yes.
and the fruits of that inquiry can be used to do certain things. That is technology. Now, if you write a program, that's not science, that is technology. Now,
Yes. Yes.
if I can invent something, a motor, or maybe even as the prime minister talks about the nalaka gas and all that, that is what, that is not science. you know they are the planes, because of the cloud, the planes are the radars will not work. That people is science today. And when the prime minister of the country talks about it, the general civil society doesn't say what is happening here. And we are in 2023, 2024. When he said that, it was 2022, 23, and today we are in 2024. Instead of going forward, and coupled with that, there is an active encouragement to past worshipping. We had everything. We
Yes.
had,
Yes.
I heard a very respected guru, very modern, of course, saying that we had aeroplanes, and the name Australia came from. Did you hear this? The name Australia came from. After the end of the Mahabharata war, all the astras, the weapons of the Pandavas, were stored in an island. So the astras were stored in an island, therefore that became Australia and then Australia. And the audience were
Oh,
very delighted to clap. These are the things that are happening now.
wow.
Huh? There's an onslaught and past worshipping. If you had aeroplanes, you just gave it up like that. I don't know what do we do with these aeroplanes. There's no use. I don't give it off. Give it up. Forget it. Did it happen? How did a civilization which once had aeroplanes just like that gave it up? So and
Yes.
and you see, on the one hand, I'm jobless. On the other hand, I'm desperate. I'm looking for some purpose in life. I don't see a purpose in life. Either I go to drug, or I say, look, I'm great because my ancestors were great. They had weapons. Australia is nothing but this. And the entire thing was
False
my
sense
thing.
of pride.
All sense of pride and past worshipping. You know, these
Yeah.
are the raw material for the project that is in progress today.
And what's worse, Prabhakar, is that when statements come from the prime minister himself, like the ones that you mentioned, or the extra 2AB, or global warming नहीं हो रही है, हमारी गर्मी की सहन करने की क्षमता घट गई है, things like that. These statements coming from the highest person holding the highest office in the country actually legitimizes quackery and fakery to
In my
such a
childhood,
large extent.
Dev, I remember my elders that time, a lot
Hmm.
of people were getting into BSc in the graduation, Bachelor of Science. And you know what they used to tell us? And when I came for my graduation, BCom was very, very popular, Bachelor of Commerce.
Hmm.
But the generation before me, BSc was very popular. Because
Hmm.
when I came to my graduation, banking sector was opening up, increasing, and all that. But before that was BSc. And my elders used to say, one generation before, my uncles and my aunts and my elder sisters and their contemporaries used to say, we opted for BSc because we heard Jawaharlal Nehru and Radhakrishnan speak about science. Today,
Yes.
the Prime Minister doesn't speak about science. The ruling dispensation doesn't speak about science. Our political leaders don't speak about science. They speak about, you know, uh, ancient India. We had that and we had this. Fine. But today, our young minds will have to be scientific minds.
Yes. It's just basically obfuscating the reality of today and diverting attention to the past, rather than allowing people to very logically think about what they are going through, which is a result of the actions of this regime. So it's a very beautiful ploy of diverting attention. Last question before we wind up. Um, what would be your message to the youth of India and civic society at large today? Should this regime lose and not hand over power forth, as is the
Yes.
worry of many in India,
Well,
myself included?
I'm equally worried, Dev, because you see, this regime is trying everything from the way they have interfered with the appointment of the election commissioners and election commission of India, and election commission of India therefore doesn't object to the ruling party, the prime minister, violating repeatedly, even in a single day, more than half a dozen violations of the model code of conduct. And then the
Hmm.
way Surat unanimous election happened, and the way Indore was almost about to happen that way, but then somehow it didn't. The way Chandigarh election took place, and mayor election, Supreme Court had to intervene.
The
All these things
hmm,
put together, it gives
hmm,
me a very strong indication that this regime doesn't want to go out of power. Of course they would like to remain in power, but mainly because they have too many ugly skeletons in their cupboard, starting from Pegasus to Rafael to PM cares to the gap between what their declared income is and what they've spent. Some people have computed about 60,000 crores and so many things. So even I mean, I mean, there's some doubts about the functioning of the EVMs and all that. Even in spite of all that, even if they lose, they will not easily yield power to somebody and quietly go away. That is my apprehension. I mean, I'm not trying to sound alarmist, but then it is in the realm of possibility. Now, if that is the
yes.
case, I don't have much hope. Uh, mm, uh, I have much hope in this, from the traditional political parties. I don't think
Hmm, hmm,
they're prepared to really stand up and say, look what happened and all that kind of thing, because they're worried that they might be accused of being a bad loser and all that kind of thing. It is the civil society, especially the young people, who will have to call this out, and it is the civil society organizations which have to network and organize a lot of people for this, and say that, look, you declare what is at every phase. You declare what is the gross voting in every constituency. That's not being done. Percentages are being declared. So we have to insist on that, and then compare. And a lot of us from the civil society will have to pressurize the political parties, so that each political party gets that 17C or something like that, where exact number of votes polled in each booth, and so that can be consolidated, aggregating in each constituency. This is the thing, and that could be aggregated for the entire phase. You compare it with other political parties. Other political parties will have to network and then declare, and then let the election commission say no, that is not correct, and there's something else which is correct. It has to be contested. So at that level,
Yes.
as well as at the ground level, this needs to be taken up very, very seriously, because this republic has to be saved. The republican values have to be saved. The diversity, liberalism, democracy, secularism, these things have to be saved. They are under severe threat as on today. If we allow this regime to somehow or the other manage to come back to power or not leave power and stay put. Again, I'm not sounding alarmist, but I tell you, we will not have another general election free and fair. That's one. Second thing, let me say this also, having said this much, that every state is likely to suffer the fate of Manipur. Every state is likely to burn as Manipur is burning today. This regime will have to go. First of all, exercise your franchise. Go and convince people, tell them, look, this is what is happening in the country. And because it's much more at stake for you, young people, vote and then call out any fraud that is likely to happen. Only then can we save this democracy and secular fabric.
What I clearly see, Prabhakar, why I specifically asked you this question, is that a lot of people my age, specifically, and even younger than me, they are generally not interested in politics. They don't understand the all pervasive nature of politics and how it affects their lives. And what doom it will spell for us, the youth of India, going forward if this regime comes back to power or holds on to power forcefully. Because we are in the thick of it, we are at the receiving end of everything, every policy decision of this regime. Um, that is something that the youth of India needs to understand. It's about our present and our future. So,
Very
with this, I thank you, Dr. Parakala Prabhakar, for taking the time and having this very important conversation with me. Um, it has been a very worrying thing to see the youth of India at the receiving end of what's been happening under this regime. So your very incisive analysis and answers on the questions that I've put forth to you, I really and truly salute you for your courage, first of all, and for the sheer amount of reading and research that you constantly do, and to present the most incisive insight into what's happening with the country. And lastly, of course, I'm very, very honored and proud to call you a friend as well. So thank
thank
you
you.
so much for doing this with us. And to all the viewers who would have watched this today, I urge you to please share this with the young people in your families, no matter what their age is, whether they are teenagers, whether they are now into college, whether they are doing their masters, their PhD, or they've started working, they're in their 30s. Whoever is a young person, I urge you to share this with them so that they may think about what's happening to their country and take a little bit of interest in politics going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dev. Always a pleasure talking to you. Bye. Wonderful. I think the timing is okay.